That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Disco Boy, the directorial debut of Giacomo Abbruzzese, which premiered in competition at the 2023 Berlin International Film Festival, where it won the Silver Bear for Outstanding Artistic Achievement. It is being released courtesy of Big World Pictures in New York on February 2nd, followed by Los Angeles on February 9th, 2024.
Directorial debut. What is this movie about? After a painful journey through Europe, Alexi arrives in Paris to join the Foreign Legion. Meanwhile, in the Niger Delta, Jomo struggles against the oil companies threatening his village and the lives of his family. What's your pull quote?
A different kind of Legionnaire's disease highlights our global interconnectedness in this ghostly tale about violence, guilt, and sublime atonement.
Mine. Visually stunning with a terrific lead performance, Disco Boy is an impressive directorial debut. So what is it about? Franz Rogowski plays Aleksei, and we see that he and his friend, who are from Belarus, have like a 3-day visa to go visit Poland. So they're on the bus to Poland, and when they get there, it's clear they're not there to be tourists. They're trying to cross the border to ultimately get to France. While they're crossing the border, Aleksei's friend gets injured by a passing boat, which happens to be a police boat, and doesn't make the journey. Like, would appear that he dies in the water. So Franz gets to, Aleksei, gets to France, and he's being interviewed by some sort of official, and the official asks him, "Are you willing to take risks?" And all of a sudden we cut to Aleksei in the Foreign Legion, like he's in boot camp training, and we're told that if he commits to this, if all of the people who are in boot camp commit to it, do what they're told, after 5 years they can change their name and get a French passport. So essentially, like, they're trying to get asylum. So that has happened. Concurrently, there's a character named Jomo who's part of this like political activist group. The acronym is MEND.
Movement for the Emancipation of the Niger Delta.
And they're basically like anti-government in the sense that they're concerned that the Niger government is basically selling their country to industry, like the oil companies. And MEND is concerned that after these companies literally suck us dry, there will be nothing left for the people. Mm-hmm. So that's what they're resisting against. But these two people intersect when Franz's character, Aleksei, his battalion is sent to Niger to help rescue some French people who've been held hostage.
Yes,
and
by MEND. Mm-hmm.
And when he gets there, he ends up like a killing Jomo, not deliberately, but as part of his job.
Well, it's hand-to-hand combat,
very personal, mm-hmm. which is important because it would seem that Jomo, who we get a scene prior to that killing, where he and his sister are practicing some sort of like spiritual ritual, mm-hmm. and it almost seems like there's some supernatural component to it. So based on the events after the killing, one would assume that Jomo's spirit has now entered Aleksei. Mm-hmm. So right after the killing, Aleksei and some of his fellow soldiers go out in Paris to a nightclub. And Aleksei sees Jomo's sister, who he's never met before, mm-hmm. and he immediately recognizes her and gravitates towards her. And then the second half of the film is Aleksei sort of becoming disconnected to what it meant to be a soldier, culminating in his sergeant telling him, like, if you don't get your act together, you are not getting your passport. And then we see Aleksei go to his locker, burn up his uniform and his identification, and then go to that same nightclub and dance with Jomo's sister. The end.
And it's clear that she realizes that her brother is inside him. I think it is visually where
I got the sense that she understands. Yeah. Uh-huh. So the story is pretty simple, but I think the symbolism and the sort of like fantastic nature of it all works very well.
I agree. I mean, I really like. This is the second time I've seen it, and I think on a rewatch, I wish there had been some things that felt a little bit more, but I do really like it, and I like what it's saying, kind of metaphorically, about the colonial body. It's we have an Italian director, a German star. We have Laetitia Ky, who's from the Ivory Coast, who's in Philippe Lecote's Night of the Kings. Morr Ndiaye is playing Jomo. So it does feel kind of like a global film, but specifically talking about France in Niger Delta region. They were historically a French colony. About a year after this film premiered, in December, it was announced that France was taking all of its military out of this region, which I think is interesting. And I guess that France has also mined uranium over here for many years. So there's a lot of things going on beneath the surface that are specific to these kind of people in this place.
Before we talk about what more you wanted, I think we should give the highlights of the film, which I think is the cinematography.
Oh, Hélène Louvart, who's one of the best cinematographers working today by far.
It really is stunning.
And I mean, I really like the murder scene with Jomo, who's
because like it's night vision.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's rising out of the water and has attacked Franz Rogowski, who's there. And you kind of see. It's like Predator night vision. I was also, since I've seen the film the first time, I've seen Harmony Korine's Aggro Drift, which the whole film looks like that, which I don't think works for a whole narrative, but that looks spectacular, I think. But Louvart, you've seen her work in all kinds of things. She's worked with Alicia Rohrwacher. She did Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, a great Marco Dutra film called All the Dead Ones. I mean, visually, yes, and that's why the film won the award it did.
I think the screenplay is really strong because I had read the premise I read in the beginning of this video prior to watching the film, and I only agreed to watch it because of Franz Rogowski, because I do like him so much. But the premise kind of was like, oh, what exactly is this? Because originally the title of the movie, Disco Boy, I thought it would be something else. But ultimately, I think the story works very well. It's not overly fussy.
No.
Since I mentioned it, the title comes from Jomo. He is with a fellow Menend associate on a boat, and they're just talking. And the associate says, like, what would we be doing if we weren't doing this? And Jomo says, well, I'd probably be in Paris with my sister dancing. Mm-hmm. And the associate says, oh, you're a disco boy. I think that's such a strong I really like the title of the movie. And
I like how that works he does technically end up get to be dancing in Paris with his sister.
Yeah.
But in a different body. And I like what the acronym MEN, MEN is a word that means, binding together something that's been ripped apart or broken, and that's these two bodies. And Rogowski as a person who has come, I think it's also telling when he burns up his locker, we see a quote on the wall talking about how you can still be French even though you haven't inherited the blood, but you can spill blood for France. And he has a moment where he tells the man that owns the bar, Udoka, who's now known as Maureen, is dancing, and he says, we thought it'd be better here, but it's not.
What more would you have wanted?
I feel like it could have felt more... there could be more, a deeper emotional reverberation.
I rarely say I want movies to be longer, but I think this could have stood an extra 15 minutes. For me specifically, I think I wanted more with Jomo and his sister.
Yes.
Their connection. Mm-hmm. Because it is clearly very strong.
Well, because the moment, one of my favorite parts is at the end when you can tell that she realizes who Alexi now is, because there's a tear coming down her face in the nightclub. I just think that could have been deepened a bit more.
I don't have many notes, but the first one is that when we first see Alexi, Franz Rogowski's character, in boot camp, they give them these little jumpsuits that I thought were kind of cute. They look like
in the
80s,
blue?
Yeah, like little 80s velour jumpsuits.
Well, and
do I have to join the Foreign Legion to get one of those?
And all of the brainwashing, I think, that's kind of going on there with. It's like a rebirth. Like, this is your new family. You're going to get to be somebody else. But
although, wasn't that sergeant like the nicest sergeant you've ever seen? Like, most drill sergeants are screaming and yelling, and he actually seemed quite nice.
He did. And the falling out with Alexi is over him refusing to sing Edith Piaf. which I think was interesting. But the French Legionnaires always, you can't talk about French Legionnaires and not think of Claire Denis' Beau Travail also. And the significance of dancing in that film to Rhythm of the Night by Corona.
There's an interesting moment when we first meet the Menend group, this like sort of activist group, because there's this like white, I think British, like reporter from Vice. Oh no, maybe she's American, because she says she's from Vice US, and she comes up and she just strolls up on these like men who look dangerous.
And it's like she's on the maidenhead of this boat riding up, and she's got a microphone. She's ready to go, and it's kind of jarring. But it reminded me of Bruno Dumont's France, where Léa Seydoux is interviewing kind of a similar group of men doing something like that, but then we see all the behind the scenes shenanigans.
Yes. So after Alexi kills Jomo, he's like visibly upset. He goes back to his battalion, and then they're like, well, let's celebrate, let's go out. And Alexi gets into a fight at the club where like the staff have to throw his ass out. So he's sort of wandering the streets, and he settles somewhere, and I think he falls out, like he's on the ground, and we see like Jomo, like he looks dead kind of, because he looks a little gray and his lips are a little ashy, which is not how he presented earlier in the film, and we know he's dead. And it seems to be like that's the point where Jomo takes over. So it's not very subtle. But...
No, and so... Yeah.
But the reason I bring that up is I think telling the story just very quickly, and like if we didn't say that we, like clearly from our poll quotes we like the movie, but if we hadn't said that and you just tell the quick story, you would think that this could get ridiculous very fast.
And it could be.
But it doesn't. Because I didn't know what this movie was about, and when I saw Jomo like approach Alexi after we know he's died, I was like, okay, what are we doing?
I'd also recommend seeing this in a theater, because the soundtrack by Vitalik, one of my all-time favorites, Vitalik does the score for this. And there are a couple songs in this that I think are better served to hear with the visuals on, like in the theater.
The only other note I have is that in addition to seeing Jomo contact Alexi after he's died, we see that Jomo and his sister are heterochromatic, like one of their eyes, like both eyes aren't the same color. And then at a point towards the end, we see that now Alexi, Franz Rogowski's character, also has that same eye color pattern. So I think it's very well done. And I thought about it a lot after I watched it. What would you give Disco Boy?
I would give it 3. But if you like Franz Rogowski dancing, is another reason to see this. And
it's funny you mentioned that, because after the film ended, I went on YouTube and found a clip of Franz dancing from, I think it's a Michael Haneke movie.
I was just going to say, if you like this and you haven't seen Happy End from 2017.
Happy End, that's what it was.
That is, and I think he's dancing to Sia.
Yes.
And it's a kind of a bonkers scene, but he plays Isabelle Huppert's son in that.
Yeah, he kind of dances the same in this.
Yes.
It kind of looks like you dancing, but...
Maybe that's why I like it. He seems like he's enjoying himself.
I would actually give Disco Boy 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was very good. Anything else?
No.
Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.